Welcome. Thank you for choosing to attend this session. It's great to see you all here. Hope you're enjoying the first day of SusaCon. It was a great session downstairs, the keynote. We had DP, we had the customer awards, and then the very impressive Colonel Nicole. She was amazing. Which brings us here. So, quick introductions. My name is Imogen Ashcroft. I work at SUSE. I'm the consulting director covering EMEA, which is Europe, Middle East, Africa. I've worked at SUSE for over 6 years now, but I've spent my whole career in professional services departments of software companies. Various sizes and kinds. I'm delighted to have with me today Martin Weiss. Martin joins us from Germany. Martin is a lead architect in our consulting function, which means that he's out there every day working with customers on their cloud native, their edge solutions, the whole SUSE stack. He's a fantastic subject matter expert, and I couldn't ask for a better wingman for this presentation. Okay. So here's our agenda for today, and in a bit of a shock twist, we're not really here to tell you anything new, okay? But we are here to tell you things that are important and things that are, in our joint experience, often overlooked by customers as they look to implement technology solutions. Okay. So it's relevant. We want to contextualize for you what operational readiness is all about, and remind you of some key principles that have come through over the years from some of the big thinkers in the IT space, and then talk to you about how you might be able to use some of those ideas in practice within your own organizations to meet your own challenges. So without further ado, I'm going to hand across to Martin to get us started.
Okay, so basically what we are talking about is we are talking about the transformation or evolution that we are having in IT and how to deal with that. As you can see, I'm in the business now. I'm 29 years old and I'm in business since 29 years, so I experienced several transformations or evolutions in the past few years. Some of you may have had that as well. And as we learned also in the keynote, there is that thing, cloud native, digital transformation, all of these fancy terms. And I want to start a bit with the history and where we are today. So before digging into this one, is anyone here who already had experience with some IT transformation things in the past years? I would say at least the bit older people, they have seen that several times. Basically, the message I want to give you here is the new transformation we are having, the new evolution is nothing different than what we experienced in the past already several times. So we had a lot of transformations in IT. Basically, whenever there's something new showing up, we tend to adopt it, we try to adopt it, we try to change everything that's out there by 100% to the new solution. We had that with the desktop management story, where we were using ISOs or CD-ROM drives and updated the machines, and then we centralized it, did desktop management, we did that transformation. And what I'm talking here about is more the data center and the infrastructure transformation. Basically, in the really old days, let's say more than 20 years ago or around 20 years ago, I call it Stone Age. We had a scenario where we had many servers spread around the company, where department servers, things like that. Most often we had one server that was hosting several applications. So we had email programs, we had databases, business logic, whatever. We had a lot of different applications on these servers. And we had not too many updates. So most often we had one update of the operating system per year, or maybe we even did it only every 2 years. And we had really difficult dependencies to manage because all these applications sharing the same server have been using shared libraries from that server. So whenever I updated the server, basically I had the risk that I'm breaking several of the applications when I do that upgrade, because I'm changing one library and all the applications are depending on it. So some applications might work, some might fail. So this is basically where we are coming from, where we had 20 years ago our systems, and that's where we learned never to touch a running system. So who loves that term? Never change a running system, never touch a running system. The older, especially the older ones, because they know if they do something, things will break for sure. And pretty often we can't test it properly, so we run into issues. That's where we are coming from. So after some time, we got into the middle age. We got virtualization as part of the faster speed of hardware growth versus the speed software was requiring more capacity on the server side of things. So we had an explosion of more hardware availability, cheaper hardware. And we got virtualization technology, which allowed us to move all these old legacy stuff into our data centers, into virtualized environments, which made the management easier, which reduced the effort of hardware dependency management, things like that. And this is basically what most of you might have experienced in your environments as well. Basically, we got rid of all these department servers and we moved everything into that virtualization stack. And as part of that, we also tried to get rid of these dependencies between different applications sharing the same operating system by splitting them into separate virtual machines. So in this move, basically, we split out the stuff that we have only one application running on each virtual machine. In the end, that means we had many more virtual machines than what we initially had with these department servers. But because we standardized, we made them all identical more or less, we could get that managed and we could decouple the dependencies on these shared library levels already here. So I guess most of you are running virtualization environments, right? Yeah. And most of you might also have that scenario, one application per virtual machine. At least there is always exception to that rule, but that's the standard we have here. And now we're basically in the next transition phase. Basically what we are doing these days is we got a technology called containerization. We got a technology called Kubernetes, which allows us to orchestrate that containerized applications. And what this technology allows us to do is we are moving all the dependencies that in the old days were coming from the operating system, all these libraries, we're moving them into containers. And by having them in containers, we can totally manage them separately and independent of the operating system. So with this containerization, we gain values like independency on the operating system. So once you're running an application in a container, the advantage is you can replace the operating system underneath. You can use the dark side Linuxes, you can use the green side Linuxes, and you can change one with the other whenever you want. If your applications are running a container, there is no hard dependency on the libraries that the operating system provides. So this is one of the really big advantages here. With Kubernetes, we get a standardized way of deploying these applications, rolling them out, configuring them, automating all of that. So we get the complete independency of the operating system, and this technology also allows us to release much more often, because releasing new versions always has this break other things problem when we are having shared components. With the separation that we do in containers, we don't have these dependencies anymore, and that means we can easily change single applications without breaking anything else in the same system. And that gives us the value of release often, release early. we can deliver software, sometimes I say before it's ready, but that gives us the value we don't have to wait for 1 year for the new software release. We can do incremental changes, and with that we can deliver the software, get feedback, react on that feedback, update the software. We can change much faster. And the other thing is we get portability. Portability means if I have all my applications in a containerized world, if I deploy it with Kubernetes technologies, I can run them everywhere, every time. It doesn't matter if it's in the public cloud, in the private cloud, in my data center, in a remote data center, on the edge, near, tiny, whatever you want to call it, we can run it everywhere. From my point of view, the biggest benefit we get with this technology is a much faster adoption of new software applications in your environment, a much faster possibility to change. So when we look at that, the big thing that you have to think about when we're going down that cloud native way is, in the old days, we have been doing yearly updates of applications. With this technology, the idea is that we can do an update with every line of code that we are changing. That's the dream. We are not yet there, and sometimes we also have breaking changes, so never touch a running system is still something to keep in mind. It's not all bad what we had in the old days, but you also have to keep in mind that with this technology, the big value is much faster time to market. So if I want to get a new application in my environment, for example, I just deployed SUSE AI when it was released, and it took me an hour to get it running in my Kubernetes environment. If you think about the old days, how long it took to get a new server, prepare the operating system, install the application, it was a week's project, but now it's a days or hours project. We are much faster here. We have everything driven by APIs, which allows us to do 100% automation, which is also one of the key things we want to do. But we also have to have this mindset change in mind. Basically, some people in your company think about never touch a running system. Don't do anything there. And on the other hand, on the other side of the plan, or on the other side, we want to change things immediately. And we need to find a way for left and right and manage that properly. So this is one of the big things here. The other thing is, in the old days, basically we aligned the application life cycles. In the new days, because we can do daily changes, all the components that we're deploying come in different life cycles, different release cycles, which means we have to manage the alignment of these different updates based on their dependencies, and that's a few of these challenges. So the good thing is we get rid of the operating system dependency completely, because everything is what we depend on is part of the container. But we get new dependencies, dependency on the Kubernetes version, dependency between applications. So if you're choosing out of 12 different applications that work together, you still have this dependency management challenge. So with this, back to you, Imogen.
Thank you. So we've heard from Martin about some of the advantages, also some of the challenges involved in introducing cloud native. We also heard from DP this morning about the push to innovate, but the fact that also you need to keep the lights on with existing technology and the constant pressure to do more with less. So technology, much as we love it at SUSE, and we do, is never going to be the whole answer. To meet your IT challenges in order to meet your business challenges, there needs to be more components to go into the mix. So I'm just going to step back in time a little bit. That's a bit of a theme for this presentation. We're going backwards and forwards, so keep up. The year is 2014, and it's 1 year since a book came out called The Phoenix Project. So that's what, 11 years, 12 years ago now. Is anyone familiar with the Phoenix Project? A few, okay. So that stuff's old hat, right? Not relevant anymore. Been there, done that? No, okay. So it may be 12 years ago, but this business novel about a fictional company struggling in the business sense, struggling to stay competitive, and looking towards a major new IT project to revive their fortunes, to close the gap on the competition, and the struggles that they have to make that project effective, to make that implementation effective, and ultimately how they overcome those struggles to make it a success. So with core concepts like the 3 ways, the 4 types of work, the theory of constraints. We don't have time to go into all of that this morning. But if you're not familiar, I would recommend it. Of course, it's also now available in various digital formats and 10-minute summaries and all that kind of thing. Right, 2014, 1 year since the Phoenix Project, and I was working at VMware. And I was lucky enough to be accepted as a speaker at VMworld, which is their major customer event. In the technology space, what was new and exciting at that time at VMware was something called NFV, Network Function Virtualization for telcos. And a colleague and I gave a presentation where we talked a bit about the technical concepts in NFV, but we also talked about a concept called operational readiness. So we were saying, okay, this is a cool new technology. However, if you don't set yourself up to use it in terms of your people and your processes, you're not going to succeed with this technology. And ever since then, although things move on, technologies move on, the same has remained true. And as Martin and I and our team work with countless customers, we see again and again that these ideas may not be new, but a lot of people are still not adopting them. So a lot of people are still not thinking about their operational readiness. So what does that really mean? So the graphic at the bottom represents, roughly, complexity. So you heard from Martin about the exciting opportunities of cloud native and edge. But of course, there is also complexity. And if you ever experience the marketing telling you differently, let's just say that's not the whole story. Okay. So there is plenty of complexity there within the technology. On the top left, then, we see a simple diagram. This is an old concept. Plan, build, and run. Or as we more frequently experience it, something more like this, right? Pretend to plan. Bit of a plan, quick plan. Build, that's the bit people like. Yeah, everyone likes to build. The old Lego scenario. Everyone's good with that bit. What happens next? That's the running away, okay? So you pretend to plan, you build, you have fun building, and then you run away, okay? What people fail to think about is what is going to happen to this thing that we're building? How is it going to be used successfully over time? How is it going to be grown, adopted, matured? Someone else's problem, right? But whose problem? Okay, and if you're not thinking about those things, then you're not setting yourself up for success. Okay, with that, I'm going to hand back to Martin.
Thank you, Imogen. So I was asked if I'm talking about customers and will tell you a bit about customer names. I will not, because I'm sure that most of the things I'm talking about now were also challenges or are challenges that you are already facing or might have been facing or will be facing in the future. But I want to give a bit of an idea what the experiences are we made in customer scenarios where we wanted to adopt cloud native things or where we have gone that way. And back to my original story, basically we are in a transformation way, we have a constant change. And today, basically every customer is somewhere on his way from legacy to cloud native. So I'm pretty sure all of us will be hit by the cloud native story earlier or later. So if you don't have cloud native yet, one of the applications you're buying in the future, if you acquire or if you buy some business relevant application, it might come as containers and then you're forced to run it in a cloud native way. So I guess that everybody of us, similar like virtualization, we were all going into that way. We will also all go into the containerized and Kubernetes way. We see that, and most of the people are somewhere on their roadmap from legacy to cloud native. We are all on that trip. We are just at different places at the moment, and we will have different traffic jams, we will have different accidents on the way. And maybe we will never reach the target, but we have to deal with that situation. And maybe we'll also never get rid of the legacy stuff as well. Maybe there are good reasons to keep the legacy stuff for a set of services. We'll see. So the things basically we hit in customer environments when we started that trip with them, where first of all, our target is always to have 100% automation. When we do the automation, when we use all these APIs, we get the full value of cloud native. So we're using technologies like infrastructure as code, Terraform. You might have heard of all of these terms. And when we start implementing that at customers, most often we run into the problem that the guys we are talking to that want to deploy Kubernetes rely on components from other people, like the storage guys, the network guys, the load balancer guys, the firewall guys, a lot of the virtualization guys. A lot of other parts in the company need to join my story to make my automation in the end successful. And this is the first big problem you have to think about, how to make all these different silos that you have in your company work together. So we are talking about the DevOps story in this regard. So many people think different about DevOps. I personally believe it doesn't exist. This is one of the things. We have this term, and the vision behind that is that the developer is working together with the operations guy, and they're doing the job together. The bigger the company is, the more difficult such a setup will be. So automation, for example, is we want to deploy Kubernetes, we need a virtual machine, we need a network setup, and many companies these days can only achieve that by following their own old ITIL. You know ITIL? You have heard about the term ITIL? Today I call this IT-ill, because in reality it is a super framework for processes, but it's not compatible with the agile way we are dealing with in this cloud native scenarios. We just can't slow down everything by waiting on an approval for 4 weeks or getting a virtual machine in 4 weeks. This thing is reality. The bigger the company is, at least from my experience, the slower these processes are, and most companies only work today because people can bypass one or the other defined process. Otherwise, they wouldn't work. So that's the automation topic. The focus is we want to automate 100% because that gives us repeatable solutions, immutable staging, a lot of things we get out of that. In the old days, we have done it with configuration management. Now with Kubernetes and the API usage, the great thing is that we get standardized ways of installing, configuring, and operating applications. So this is the first point in time when basically all the applications I'm deploying are having the same, let's say, installer. So yeah, keep in mind, most important thing here is bring these teams or people out of these teams together. Otherwise, you will not be as successful as you should be. The other topic regarding backup and restore and disaster recovery. In the old days, the application guys were relying on the operators to take care about backup and recovery. So the operators had information, oh, there is an Oracle database, I need that Oracle agent, I do the backup of the database, fine. In a cloud-native world, this works completely different. So we still have databases, but the difference is that the applications will run in a spread out scenario. They are loosely connected. So when we have transactions, they might happen in multiple different places in my Kubernetes environment. And it's really, from my point of view, it's impossible to have a standardized way for backup and recovery that works for all the applications. So in my virtual machines, I can run Veeam or some technology, back up the virtual machine, and as long as I don't have dependencies to other virtual machines, I can restore it easily. With cloud-native applications, I really have to dig into the applications themselves, figure out how they are working, where they have persistent data, how I can do transaction security, make sure that I never lose a banking transaction or an email or things like that, with a proper backup and recovery scenario. This really needs to be done together with the backup operators or people knowing about backup technologies, the tools we have, and with the application guys. My experience is that most often we get applications, we can easily install them, but there's no documentation and no concept how to back it up without losing any data and how to restore it. So this is one of the other gaps I want to mention here. So when you're going down that road, make sure that all the applications you're developing yourself or you're buying from somebody have a clear procedure on how to do a backup and recovery of the persistent data and the transactions that are going on. Regarding scalability and fault tolerance, that's another challenge. Normally when we go down that road with cloud native, we want to have some planning for resources, capacity, cluster sizing. And pretty often the first question is, how does your workload look like? And how much resources are required by your workload? How much memory, CPU, disk space, performance, all of these parameters. And the experience these days is that not even the developers know that. So pretty often we have to start with something here, but keep in mind that whatever we take as a starting point might be completely wrong and we have to change. Then knowledge and experience. We have a lot of knowledge and experience in the legacy side of things. Pretty often, companies go the way and say, okay, you're doing the server operations, now your new job is do that Kubernetes thingy. It's not that easy. There are a lot of things that need to be treated completely different. That's also one of the reasons why you might be attending this session here. There are so many things that are different compared to the legacy way that you really have to build up knowledge and you have to plan for proper time for that. We did a few implementations where the customer then only wanted to have a 3-hour handover. So we did an implementation for 4 weeks, 8 weeks, or a year. And then the customer wanted to have a knowledge transfer in 3 hours, and then the contract was closed. Our support had a very long time then and fun with these customers because they were lacking in that knowledge and experience thing. So please make sure when you're going that way, make sure that you also take care about proper knowledge build up, take the right people, enable them so that they can do the job properly and do the proper time planning. Last but not least, there are 2 different scenarios regarding applications. Some applications you might develop yourself in your company. So these are pretty often under control and you can control the life cycle. But there are also third-party applications you might get from external sources that might have a completely different life cycle and they might be drifting away from each other. So managing these dependencies are really important. And we are already running out of time again, as usual. So a few learnings. Basically, what I said already, maybe we can see who sees himself also on this road from legacy to cloud native. Is it something I'm right with, or is it something I'm observing completely wrong? Are you all also on the way from legacy to cloud native? Anybody against that? No, great, I'm not wrong. And all of you, I bet, if you do a measurement, some are early start or are just starting with it or planning to start with it. Some others might already be 99% cloud native, we don't know. A thing that is really important is, in this agile world, we cannot pre-plan everything. We have to prepare ourselves to make mistakes and learn out of them. So it's a constant trial and error what we are doing. And that's something we have to accept. We cannot expect that whatever we do on the first try works for the next 10 years. That's not going to happen. So focus on catching everybody in your team, in your company, with your partners at the place where they are. Some are already very far, some are very behind, and then you need to work together to bring all aligned to reach your target in the end, make that application running, etc. And if you're not too deep in the technology yet, get the ball rolling, start with something, do an iteration, trial and error, learn out of it, adopt and change, and be prepared that whatever you do today might need a rip and replace tomorrow. That's part of the concept. That's why we are automating everything, so we can always hit the big button, destroy everything, redeploy it within minutes, and then have this change introduced. And I think now it's Imogen again.
So just a quick reflection before we move on. I wanted to read a quote from Bill Gates, which you might know. He said that the first rule of any technology used in a business is that automation applied to an efficient operation will magnify the efficiency. The second is that automation applied to an inefficient operation will magnify the inefficiency. Okay. So again, back to this thought about the technology, the people. We're going to talk a bit more about the people, and the process. You have to think of them working together, and the sweet spot is in the middle, where all why, how, and what. And often in my day-to-day work at SUSE, we get into some, pretty complicated, down-deep conversations about this and that. I like to try and pull it back to a why, a how, and a what, because I think often people lose sight of things that they sound very simplistic, but it can be really useful to stop and think about them. Now, the why in the center of the circle there, the clue is in the title of the book, Start with Why. And what Simon Sinek talks about is the fact that as a leader, and that can be anything from the leader of an organization as a whole to a team leader, project manager. It's not a hierarchical concept, but if you're leading something, an initiative or people, you have to have clear in your mind why you want to do something and what you're looking to achieve. And then you need to be able to articulate the why and hopefully have people buy into that. Because without a why to hold things together, to provide that central core when things get a bit crazy, it's easy to get lost. Something else that people often do, and we see this a lot, is they initially have a why. So they set out on an initiative, and they're able to articulate a why. And Martin referred to this earlier. We're big fans of starting small and growing. So often we're with customers and they say, well, we want to do cloud native, but we want to start small and just do this one use case or this POC, and we'll see where it goes. And we say, great, okay. And then it's a success. The thing grows arms and legs, and suddenly people are adopting it, it's growing it. But then people haven't stopped to update their why. They're still thinking about the why the way they did when the project was small. And then as it grows, that why is less suitable to support the thing as it grows out. So defining your why is not a once-off. It's something that you need to do in a cycle. You need to keep revisiting the why. At this stage we're at now, why are we doing this? What are we trying to achieve? So keep that one in mind as we go to the next concept. Martin already touched on this. It's about building teams. So again, if you think about you have an initiative within your company, you want to introduce cloud native, or you have a platform that you want to design and deploy, you have some use cases that you know that will utilize this platform. You're looking across your organization. Maybe your organization is structured a bit like this, which is a pretty traditional way of structuring an organization. The colors don't work well on the, sorry about that, in the light. But this is a pretty vertical organization, right? You have people in different functions with different reporting lines. And then you think, okay, the people I need for my initiative, so the people in the darker pink boxes here, they're scattered across different locations within this kind of pretty vertical organization. So I can just I can just tap them on the shoulder and say, good news, you're in the team. But how well is that going to work? You're looking to build a horizontal across an existing vertical organization. It's all kinds of challenging. So it needs a mindset shift from functional teams to cross-functional teams, okay? So you're looking across your organization, you're locating the skills, expertise, I would suggest mindset that's going to help you in this project. And you're trying to then introduce them into a team. Now, this might well be a virtual team. It might be a part-time virtual team. It might be a team you're asking people to participate in alongside other teams or part-time jobs. So it can get challenging. You're bringing people together, but without necessarily the support of a traditional structure. And that's where your why becomes really important. So if you're going to lead a team like this, and it doesn't have to be big, it might be 3 people, it might be 5 people to begin with. It might be comprised of people from your internal organization and from the outside, okay? You might have external companies you're working with, contractors that you're working with. Kind of doesn't matter where they're from. What you're trying to do is unite these people together, give them a purpose, and give them a sense of understanding what they're working together to achieve. So I referenced you back to your why. The ability to articulate the why, try to get people to buy into that, foster this feeling of people being in a team, even if it isn't their home or functional team, so that you can try to bring these people along with you on your technology journey. Okay. So a quick reminder of some takeaways. Hopefully none of this is new, having listened to us. So yeah, we love technology, but technology by itself is not the whole answer. Okay? People, process, and technology. Successful technology adoption requires mindset change. Okay? This one's Martin's favorite. Failure is success in progress. It's a quote from Einstein. Or FAIL as an acronym. Everyone loves an acronym. So FAIL is first attempt in learning. So this is bound up in the cloud native philosophy. Okay, you have to be willing to fail, and you have to approach that positively and learn from it and keep going.
Fail fast. That's the important thing.
Colonel Nicole also talked about that this morning. And don't forget the 3 C's. Communication, collaboration, coordination. Think about that virtual team I was talking about, building. How are you going to keep that team working? How are you going to keep that team motivated? That's where your 3 C's come in. And then one more for you. Because of where we are, I thought we should include a reference. So Walt Disney, bit of a controversial figure in some ways, but he's quoted as saying, "The way to start is to quit talking and get doing." And we'll leave you with that thought as you go on your journey or you continue your journey, and we wish you much luck with it. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much.